The first thing Malcolm Reed noticed was the look. It was the kind of glance that lingered a split second too long in the rearview mirror, a warning flaring up behind flashing headlights. Malcolm kept both hands on the wheel, posture straight, eyes ahead. It was Friday night on Jefferson Avenue, and the city hummed with after-work energy. Windows were down, the smell of barbecue on the air, and somewhere in the distance kids laughed as streetlights flickered on. He'd just left a dinner for the Children's Hospital Foundation, the gift bag on the passenger seat still crinkled from where the event planner had stuffed in a silver pen, a lapel pin, and a handwritten thank you note for his exceptional commitment. He could still hear the last words of the hospital director echoing in his head. "You're changing lives, Mr. Reed." Not many people in this city can say that. Now, less than 15 minutes later, the only thing changing was the mood in his car. The blue and red lights sliced across the darkness. A siren popped once, sharp and quick, more a command than a request. Malcolm exhaled slowly and pulled the Mercedes to the curb, engine idling smooth and soft, the kind of hum only a handful in the neighborhood could afford. He rolled the window down before the officers even approached. He'd learned long ago there was a choreography to these things. Be ready. Don't reach for anything. No sudden movements. He glanced at his license, registration, and proof of insurance, all already lined up on the dash. The first officer, Scott Mitchell, though Malcolm didn't know the name yet, walked up with a swagger that tried to pass for confidence but came off as suspicion. His partner, Ryan Walker, hung back, hands near his belt, scanning the street as if expecting backup. "Evening, sir," Mitchell started, peering into the cabin. "License and registration." "Evening, officer," Malcolm replied, keeping his tone warm but careful. He handed over the documents. "Is there a problem?" "Mind stepping out of the vehicle?" Malcolm felt the muscles in his jaw tighten. He'd been through this dance before, always the same. "May I ask what this is about?" "We'll get to that," Mitchell said, voice clipped. "Step out, please." He did as asked, moving slow and deliberate. The world always seemed to slow down at moments like this, as if waiting to see which way things would tilt. Malcolm stood, hands visible, the city noise behind him fading into a kind of focused silence. Mitchell circled the Mercedes. "You own this car?" "Yes, sir, the title's in my name." "Where are you coming from tonight?" "Charity event at the Children's Hospital." Mitchell's eyes flicked to his partner, an unspoken skepticism passing between them. "You got proof of that?" Malcolm nodded toward the gift bag on the seat. "Invitation and program should be inside." Walker checked the bag, leafing through the papers. "It checks out, Scott. Says he was at the gala." Mitchell wasn't done. "Where are you headed?" "Home, 2 blocks north." "Live around here long?" "My whole life. Bought my mother's house when she passed." Mitchell eyed him, searching for cracks. "We got a call about a vehicle matching this description. Suspect may have been involved in a disturbance near the plaza. Know anything about that?" "No, sir. I haven't been near the plaza tonight except for the event." "Anyone else in the car with you earlier?" "No, just me." Mitchell paced. "You mind if we take a look inside?" Malcolm took a measured breath. "Is there a reason to search?" "Just want to be thorough. Lot of break-ins lately. Cars like this draw attention." "I'd prefer if you didn't, officer, unless you have a reason." Mitchell stiffened. "You refusing?" "I'm not refusing, I'm just asking for my rights." Mitchell stood there, a battle playing out behind his eyes. The rookie shifted, uncomfortable. From across the street, porch lights snapped on. Someone stood behind a screen door, phone in hand. Walker murmured, "Nothing suspicious here." Malcolm could feel the heat of being watched, the kind of attention that stuck to your skin long after the incident was over. Mitchell spoke into his shoulder radio. "Dispatch, this is 217. Plate number Alpha Tango 057, black Mercedes sedan, running a check." The static crackled, then a voice. "Comes back clean, registered to a Malcolm Reed. No priors, no flags." Mitchell glanced at the license again. "You ever had any run-ins with the law, Mr. Reed?" "Only traffic tickets years ago." Mitchell nodded as if the information was almost disappointing. "All right, wait here." Malcolm stood by the fender, feeling each second stretch. A child's laughter echoed from somewhere up the block. A neighbor, Mrs. Green from 2 doors down, watched from her steps, face drawn with worry. Walker handed back the bag. "Nice event. My cousin was at the children's hospital once. Good people there." "Glad to hear it," Malcolm replied, keeping his eyes on the rookies. Walker looked away. Mitchell finally returned, his voice low. "You can go, just be careful with a car like this around here. People notice." Malcolm nodded, holding his tongue. He got back in, closed the door, started the engine. The Mercedes glided away from the curb, but Malcolm could feel the weight of suspicion chasing him all the way home. He parked in his driveway, staring at the dashboard for a long moment. The house was quiet, porch light burning softly. He locked the car, listening for the familiar city sounds, music drifting from a distant party, the rumble of a bus, footsteps echoing on the sidewalk. Inside, his sister Denise sat at the kitchen table, a stack of papers spread out in front of her. "Hey," she said, looking up. "You all right? You're late." He dropped his keys in the dish. "Cops pulled me over. Said my car matched a description." She sighed, not surprised, just tired. "Again?" He shrugged. "Routine," they said. Denise stood and wrapped her arms around him. "You hungry? I saved you some pasta." He smiled, letting the tension drain away. "Thanks, Dee." They sat together, talking about little things, her new client at the law office, their mother's upcoming birthday, how the city felt both smaller and bigger every year. Denise had her own stories about being stopped, followed, and questioned for no reason except the obvious one. They never complained to anyone but each other. "You ever think about leaving?" she asked. Malcolm shook his head. "This is home. They don't get to run me off." She smiled. "Stubborn." He grinned. "Learned from you." After dinner, he wandered into his home office. Framed photos lined the walls, his parents at their wedding, Malcolm shaking hands with mayors, ribbon cuttings at the youth center, Denise at her law school graduation. The latest was a photo from the hospital gala snapped just before he left. The director had insisted on a picture for the donor wall. He hadn't wanted the attention but agreed anyway. On his desk, a letter sat unopened. The return address was from the city, Office of the Mayor. He broke the seal, scanning the page. It was an official invitation. He was being recognized at next month's City Hall meeting for outstanding service and generosity in the betterment of public life. He stared at the words. Sometimes the city felt like it was split in two. One half loved him for what he gave. The other half never saw the man, just the car and the color of the hand on the wheel. The phone rang. Curtis Banks, his friend since college, always called late. "Mal, you see the news?" "No, what happened?" Curtis laughed. "They're running a story on the new police station. You know the one you wrote the big check for?" "Yeah, I remember. They got your name in gold letters inside the lobby, bro. Not even the mayor got that treatment." Malcolm chuckled. "I told them not to do that." "Good luck. Once a city gets a donor, they want the world to know." Malcolm ran a hand over his face. "Funny thing, Curtis. Got pulled over tonight. Same street as the station." Curtis cursed softly. "You serious?" "Every word." "Did you tell them who you were?" Malcolm shook his head, as if his friend could see him. "Didn't matter. Wouldn't have made a difference." Curtis sighed. "You ever regret it? All that money, all that time, and still—" Malcolm cut him off, gentle but firm. "I don't give for them. I give for us. For the kids, for Mom and Dad. For the people who never get noticed." Curtis was quiet a moment, then laughed. "You're a better man than me?" "Not better, just stubborn." They hung up, the comfort of friendship lingering in the silence. Malcolm stared at the ceiling, the events of the night replaying in his mind. The next morning, Malcolm rose early, a habit from a lifetime of busy days. He made coffee, watched the sun filter through the blinds, and read through thank-you letters from students at the local middle school. One letter, from a boy named Elijah, stood out. "Mr. Reed, thank you for making our city better. I want to be like you when I grow up." The words made him smile, pushing back the sour aftertaste of last night's stop. That was what mattered. Denise came in, her hair still wrapped in a scarf. "You going to the dedication today?" Malcolm nodded. "Wouldn't miss it." She grinned. "Maybe the cops will remember your face this time." He snorted. "I doubt it." They drove together, Malcolm behind the wheel of the Mercedes, Denise riding shotgun. As they neared the new police station, banners and balloons fluttered in the breeze. The city was out in force, local business leaders, city officials, television cameras. The building gleamed, glass and steel, a symbol of renewal for a community long ignored. A reporter stopped Malcolm at the entrance. "Mr. Reed, can we get a quick interview?" He smiled politely. "Of course. Why do you give so much to the city when sometimes it doesn't seem to give back?" He paused, the truth coming out as easily as breathing. "Because I believe in what this city can be. I believe in the people, not just the institutions. Change happens one small step at a time." The reporter nodded, her eyes softening. "Thank you, sir." Inside, the ceremony was in full swing. The mayor made a speech, the police chief thanked the donors, and Malcolm's name was mentioned with reverence. He stood at the back, Denise at his side, trying to stay invisible. When the time came for the ribbon cutting, the chief called Malcolm to the front. Applause filled the room. He shook hands, smiled for the cameras, and tried not to think about the night before. Afterward, as people mingled, Officer Walker approached, looking sheepish. "Mr. Reed, I just wanted to say, my little cousin was at the hospital you helped fund. Thank you." Malcolm smiled, sincerity in his eyes. "Glad she's well." Walker hesitated, then blurted, "I was in the car last night. I'm sorry if I... Malcolm put a hand on the young officer's shoulder. "Do your job. Just remember, sometimes the person you're stopping is trying to do good too." Walker nodded, eyes wide, gratitude and regret mixing in his expression. Malcolm left the station with Denise, the air outside crisp and cool. He glanced back once, watching the officers move in and out of the building he'd helped create. A part of him hoped maybe, just maybe, things would be different next time. They drove home in silence, the city sprawling out before them, hope and history colliding at every intersection. Malcolm's phone buzzed as they pulled into the driveway. A flood of congratulatory texts and voicemails stacked up. Old high school classmates, business partners, even the principal from his elementary school. Denise laughed as she watched him scroll. "You ever get tired of being the city's golden child?" He rolled his eyes, but there was a warmth behind the gesture. "They only call when they need something, or when something's on TV." She nudged him. "Still means they see you." He smiled, thinking about what being seen really meant. For some people, it was just a news headline or a handshake. For others, it was the flash of blue and red in the dark, a voice demanding you prove your right to exist where you already belonged. Later that afternoon, Curtis dropped by. He banged on the door, already laughing, his big frame filling the doorway. "Man, if I'd known you were going to be on TV, I would have worn a better shirt." Denise called from the kitchen. "You never wear a good shirt, Curtis." He waved her off and turned to Malcolm. "So how's it feel, donating a whole building just to get stopped outside it?" Malcolm couldn't help but chuckle, shaking his head. "Ain't that the truth?" Curtis grew quiet, voice softer. "You all right for real?" Malcolm nodded. "I'm good, just tired, I guess." Curtis patted his shoulder. "Let 'em be tired. You keep driving your car, living your life. Don't let nobody shrink you." They watched the evening news together, the anchor talking about the generosity of local businessman Malcolm Reed. There were shots of the ceremony, the ribbon cutting, a brief interview where Malcolm's voice was calm but his eyes betrayed the weight of the past 24 hours. Curtis shook his head as the segment ended. "Funny, you give them a station and they still can't see past a car and a skin color. What's it gonna take?" Malcolm sipped his coffee. "Maybe it's not about what it takes for them. Maybe it's about what we refuse to stop doing." Curtis grinned. "That's why I hang with you, man. You say things like that and make me believe it's possible." As the night fell, the three of them, Malcolm, Denise, and Curtis, sat on the porch, the city humming around them. Stories rolled out, laughter mixing with old memories, the kind of comfort that comes from people who know you before the world ever tried to put you in a box. Denise asked, "Remember the old rec center on 44th? The summer camps, those raggedy basketballs?" Curtis cackled. "And the summer Mr. Bryant made us pick up every piece of trash in the lot before we could play." Malcolm smiled, nostalgia and pride mingling. "First time I learned that if you want something to change, you better be the one to do it." Curtis looked out at the street. How many times you think we got stopped on these blocks, just for walking too fast or laughing too loud or looking like we didn't have anywhere to be? Denise said. Enough that I started walking with my head down, for a little while anyway. Malcolm nodded, but we kept walking. The quiet held for a moment, as if the city itself was listening. Curtis asked, "What are you going to do next, Mal, after all this?" Malcolm looked up at the sky, stars peeking through city haze. "Keep giving, keep showing up, make it impossible to ignore the good, make them see more than the headlines, more than the car." Denise squeezed his hand. "You know you're stubborn." He grinned. "I learned from the best." Curtis clapped his hands together. "All right, enough of this. Let's eat. Who's cooking?" Denise shot him a look. "You know you can't cook." "True, but I can order pizza like nobody else." The laughter rolled through the porch, bouncing off the brick walls, echoing out into the street. For a moment the world felt whole, a reminder that no matter how many times you're questioned, challenged, or stopped, there's a place where you belong. There are people who know your story, all of it, and love you for it. Inside, Malcolm's phone buzzed again, another email, this one from the police chief's office. A formal invitation to meet, to discuss future partnerships and opportunities for the city. He stared at the message for a while, wondering if the chief even knew what happened the night before. He thought about answering, about what he'd say if the subject of last night's stop came up. Would he tell the truth, lay it all bare, or would he let it slide? The way so many things get swept under the rug, in the name of keeping the peace. He decided to sleep on it. The next morning brought a rush of new activity. News vans rolled past his house, and a few ambitious reporters knocked on the door, hoping for a quote or a candid shot. Malcolm dodged them as best he could, slipping out the back and heading to the rec center where he'd promised to help set up computers in the new learning lab. Kids flooded in, their voices bright and chaotic, their excitement infectious. "Mr. Reed, can you help me log in? Mr. Reed, look what I drew." He smiled and crouched beside them, grateful for the chance to be just Malcolm, not the businessman or philanthropist, but the neighbor, the mentor. One of the teachers pulled him aside. "You know, not every kid has someone who looks like them doing what you do. You make a difference, Malcolm." He nodded, humility in his eyes. "They make the difference. I'm just here to keep the lights on." He left the rec center with a new spring in his step, the noise of the city less harsh, the air a little lighter. Driving home, he spotted a patrol car parked outside the new police station. For a moment, his hands tensed on the wheel, but he kept going. He wouldn't let the past define the future. He stopped at a red light and looked over to see a mother walking her daughter, pointing at the new building with pride. The little girl waved at Malcolm, smiling, unburdened by the world's worries. He waved back, heart full. Back at the house, Denise was waiting, holding a stack of letters. "Fan mail," she teased, but some of them were real. Notes from families, thank yous from city officials, even a handwritten card from an officer's spouse whose child had recovered at the hospital. Malcolm sat with Denise, opening each letter. Some brought smiles, others quiet reflection. Each one was a piece of the puzzle, a reminder of why he refused to disappear, why he kept pushing. Curtis texted, "Game tonight, you in?" Malcolm replied, "Always." That evening he joined Curtis at the local gym for their regular basketball game. The court was cracked, the nets frayed, but it was theirs. Old friends ribbed each other, bets flew, and for 2 hours nothing mattered except the next shot. After the game, Curtis clapped him on the back. "You good?" Malcolm nodded, sweat dripping, lungs burning in the best way. "Better than good." They walked home together, trading stories and memories. Malcolm paused outside his house, looking back at Curtis. "Thanks, man, for everything." Curtis grinned. "Ain't nothing but family, Mal." He went inside, body aching but spirit strong. He sat at his desk that night, staring at the city lights, thinking about the road ahead, how every setback was just another reason to keep going, to keep giving, to keep believing. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more chances to prove himself, more opportunities to build something that would outlast suspicion, outlast fear, outlast the flash of red and blue in the dark. He was ready. Malcolm Reed started the next week as if nothing had happened, but nothing felt the same. He moved through his days with that uneasy electricity just under the skin, the kind that sharpens every glance, every word, every smile from strangers who might have seen him on the news or might have watched him get pulled over that night. It wasn't the stop itself that kept replaying in his head. It was everything that happened after. The half-felt apologies, the sideways looks from neighbors, the texts from friends both near and distant, the sense that his story now belonged to everyone. In every meeting, every phone call, he felt the silent question humming behind their voices. Is this the man who got stopped in front of the new police station he donated? By Monday morning, Malcolm was back at work in his downtown office, a sunlit corner on the 20th floor, overlooking the city that never seemed to stop needing more from him. The view was spectacular, but Malcolm barely noticed it anymore. He'd traded his suit jacket for a cardigan, the formal for the practical, and buried himself in numbers and proposals. The business had always been a shield, a way to build something concrete in a world full of shifting lines. But it wasn't just business this week. The mayor's office called, asking if he'd consider speaking at the upcoming community forum. The hospital wanted a photo shoot for a new fundraising campaign. A local high school teacher asked if he could guest lecture for their senior economics class. Everyone wanted a piece of Malcolm Reed. He picked up the phone and called Denise just to hear her voice. "You ever wish people would just let you live?" She laughed. "You'd hate it if they ignored you. You always needed something to fix." He grinned despite himself. "You know me too well." "Of course, I was there before the world knew you." He looked around his office at the framed certificates and handshakes frozen in time and felt a surge of gratitude. He was tired, yes, but not alone. Before he could reply, his assistant poked her head in. "Malcolm, there's someone to see you. Says he's from the police department." His heart skipped a beat. "Send him in." A tall man in a crisp uniform walked in, his badge gleaming in the sunlight. Malcolm recognized the face from city council meetings. Captain David Morgan, the department's community liaison, famous for his no-nonsense attitude and straight talk. "Mr. Reed, good morning." "Captain Morgan, to what do I owe the visit?" Morgan closed the door behind him, settling into the chair across from Malcolm's desk. "I wanted to speak with you in person. There's been a lot of noise about what happened the other night." Malcolm folded his hands. "Is that so?" Morgan nodded. "I saw the dashcam footage. I saw the ceremony footage too. I know your reputation, Malcolm. I also know what it's like to wear this uniform and forget that the badge doesn't see everything." Malcolm searched his face. "What are you here to say, Captain?" Morgan leaned in. "This city can be better than that. We don't always get it right. I'm not here to offer a press statement or to ask you to make this go away. I just want to tell you face to face. Some of us do see you, and we're working to do better." Malcolm let out a slow breath. "Thank you for saying that," Morgan nodded. "If you ever want to talk, my door's open. Or if you want to come down and talk to some of the rookies yourself." Malcolm smiled just a little. "Maybe I will." Morgan stood, straightened his jacket, and left. The door clicked shut with a sense of finality, but Malcolm didn't feel any lighter. Words were easy. Change was hard. He turned back to his work, but it wasn't long before his phone rang again. Curtis, always the early riser, never needed an invitation to check in. "Yo, you see the papers?" Malcolm groaned. "Please don't tell me it's front page." "Not quite, but it's in there. Local philanthropist pulled over by police outside station he donated. They got a picture of your car, man. Looking like you just robbed a bank instead of saving the city." Malcolm shook his head. "It'll blow over." Curtis's voice got serious. "Will it, though? You know how many people have sent me this story already? White, black, doesn't matter. Everyone's got an opinion. Some are mad for you, some are mad at you." Malcolm let the silence fill the line. "Yeah, I know. Listen, you don't owe anybody an explanation. You did more for this city than half those politicians combined. Don't let this eat you up." Malcolm leaned back in his chair. "It's not just me. It's what it means for everybody who looks like me." Curtis went quiet for a moment. "You always carry the world, Mal. Don't forget to take care of yourself, too." Malcolm promised he would, but even as he said it, he wasn't sure how. The day rolled on, the headlines faded, but the feeling lingered. That evening, Malcolm walked through his neighborhood, hands deep in his coat pockets. It was his ritual, a way to clear his mind and reconnect with the part of the city that felt most like home. He passed the playground where he'd taught kids how to shoot hoops, the corner store where he'd cashed his first paycheck, the mural on 56th Street painted in honor of the city's lost sons. People waved from stoops and shop windows, calling out his name. Mr. Reed, the man himself. Some clapped, some just nodded, the respect unspoken but understood. He stopped at the old barber shop, a staple for 3 generations. Inside, the bell chimed as he entered, and a chorus of "Hey, Malcolm" greeted him. Old men played dominoes in the back, kids watched cartoons in the waiting area, and the owner, Benny, was holding court in the main chair. Benny grinned, razor in hand. "You come for a cut or just to show off for the crowd?" Malcolm laughed. "Just passing through. Thought I'd check on my people." Benny set his razor down, motioned for him to sit. "You good after all that mess with the police?" Heads turned. The room got quiet. Malcolm shrugged. "I'm all right. Nothing I haven't seen before." A young man in the corner, probably 17 or 18, spoke up. "You ever get tired? Doing good? Getting stopped anyway?" Malcolm smiled at him. "You do what's right because it's right. Not for the applause. Not for the thanks. You do it because you want the world to be better when you leave it than when you found it." Benny nodded. "That's why we keep coming back here, son. Because the world's got people like you in it." The room relaxed. Laughter returned, and Malcolm felt the weight ease a little. These were his people. This was home. He left the shop with a fresh cut, shoulders straighter, head higher. He passed more neighbors, more friends, more reminders of the community that made him. At the end of the block, he paused by the mural, a riot of color, faces of children and elders, a city's history painted in layers. He reached out and touched the brick, whispering a promise to keep going, to never let the world turn him bitter. Denise was waiting when he got home, curled up on the couch with a case file. She worked long hours as a public defender, fighting for people who never made the news, who never got a chance to tell their story. She set her papers aside as he walked in. "You all right?" He nodded. "Got a lot on my mind." She patted the cushion beside her. "Come talk to me." He sat down, the house quiet except for the ticking of the clock. She listened as he talked about Captain Morgan, about the barber shop, about the questions he couldn't shake. She took his hand. "You're not alone, you know. Every time you show up, every time you speak out, you make it a little easier for the next person." He squeezed her hand back. "I just wish it didn't take so much." She smiled, weary but proud. "Change always costs, but it's worth it." They sat together in the gentle dark, the city humming outside, and for a moment Malcolm felt the balance tip toward hope. The week went by, each day carrying new echoes of that night. On Thursday, a package arrived at Malcolm's office, a framed certificate from the hospital, a thank you from the police chief, and a stack of letters from kids who'd benefited from his work. He read each letter, letting the words fill the places that had been emptied out by suspicion and pain. "Thank you, Mr. Reed, for helping my brother. Because of you, I want to be a doctor. You showed me that anything is possible." By Friday, the story had taken on a life of its own. The city council invited Malcolm to join a panel on race and policing. His inbox overflowed with requests for interviews, advice, support. Malcolm knew he couldn't say yes to everything, but he said yes to the things that mattered: the kids, the schools, the community organizations. That night, at a neighborhood meeting in the church basement, Malcolm stood before a packed room, parents, teachers, activists, elders, all waiting for him to speak. He took a deep breath, the hush falling heavy. "I know what it feels like to be stopped, to be questioned, to be doubted in your own city. I know the sting, and I know the anger. But I also know the power of showing up, the power of not letting them take away your hope, your dignity, your right to belong." He looked around the room, meeting each pair of eyes. "We have a choice every day to give in or to give more. I'm choosing to give more." I hope you'll stand with me." Applause erupted, not loud, but sustained and real. Afterward, people lined up to shake his hand, to share their stories, to say thank you. A young girl hugged him, whispering, "My mom says you're a hero." He knelt, looked her in the eyes. "Tell your mom she's the real hero. I just try to keep up." Her smile lit the whole room. Late that night, as Malcolm walked home under the streetlights, he thought about all the faces, all the voices, all the stories that wove together to make a city. He thought about the night of the stop, how small and alone he'd felt on that cold sidewalk, the doubt, the fear, the old wounds reopened. And he thought about the days that followed, the letters, the laughter, the hard questions, and the harder answers. He knew there would be more stops, more doubts, more tests of his patience and resolve. But he also knew there would be more chances to give, more chances to lift others up, more chances to change the narrative for those coming after him. As he unlocked his door, Malcolm felt a quiet certainty settle in his bones. He would keep driving, keep building, keep believing. The road ahead was long, but he was not walking it alone. By Saturday, Malcolm was a little more himself. He and Denise made breakfast, eggs, toast, and coffee strong enough to restart anyone's heart. The sunlight was clean and bright on the kitchen table. It was a good day, Malcolm decided. He was going to make it a good day no matter what else the world had to say. He had errands to run, but first he made time for the most important stop, his parents' graves. He hadn't been in a while, and it weighed on him. He drove out to Lincoln Memorial Cemetery, past the edge of the city, out where the sky opened up and the noise dropped away. He stood between the markers, tracing his father's name with his fingertips. "Hey, Dad," he murmured. "You always said you wanted us to do better than you. I hope I'm living up to that." He smiled, the old ache mixed with pride. "You'd have liked Denise's cooking, too. Mom, I still miss you. You wouldn't believe the trouble I get in with this car," he laughed, shaking his head. "But I do it for you both, for all of us." He sat for a while in the grass, just letting the silence soak in. He remembered the lessons, the long talks, the tough love, the certainty that nothing was impossible. He promised again, quietly, that he'd never stop pushing, never stop trying, never let bitterness win. On the drive back, he called Curtis. "Meet me at the gym in 20. Curtis never said no to basketball, even when his knees barked at him. "Loser buys lunch?" Malcolm grinned. "You're buying." The gym was an old cinder-block building, the kind of place that never got fancy upgrades, just new nets and the occasional mop on the floor. But the air was thick with the smell of sweat, old sneakers, and memory. Malcolm shot free throws while Curtis stretched, both men finding comfort in old routines. Halfway through their pickup game, a group of teenagers drifted in, watching from the bleachers. Curtis, never one to miss an audience, called out, "You boys want in?" They were shy at first, but Malcolm waved them over. Soon it was 3-on-3, laughter and trash talk flying, the game heated but friendly. Malcolm loved these moments when he wasn't Mr. Reed or the donor, just another guy, hustling, sweating, belonging. After the game, as they laced up their shoes, one of the boys, tall, skinny, hungry in that way young men get, asked, "You really build that new rec center, Mr. Reed?" Malcolm nodded, smiling. "Me and a whole lot of other people. Takes a team." The boy's face grew serious. "My cousin got shot last year down on 61st. I want to do something good too." "How you do it?" Malcolm squatted down to his level. "First, you believe you can. Second, you find people who believe with you. Third, you never let anybody tell you you don't belong." The boy nodded, fierce and silent. "I'm gonna try." Malcolm ruffled his hair. "I know you will." He walked home tired, muscles aching, but the ache was a good one. That night, the city lit up for the community festival, a yearly event meant to bring people together, even when the headlines tried to pull them apart. The streets overflowed with music, food trucks, children running wild, old men playing chess under the trees, women braiding hair on stoops. Malcolm worked the crowd, shaking hands, sharing hugs, posing for pictures he never asked for but never turned down. The mayor found him pressing a flyer into his hand. "Don't forget, City Hall next Thursday. We want your voice on that panel." He nodded, pocketing the paper. "I'll be there." As the sun dipped, he wandered toward the music stage, drawn by the beat and the crowd's easy joy. He spotted Simone Harris, the local reporter, with her notepad in hand. She grinned. "Can I steal you for a second?" He laughed. "You only call me when you need a good quote." She raised an eyebrow. "You always deliver." She asked about the week, about the stop, the fallout, the outpouring of support. He kept his answers honest, unpolished, refusing to pretend that 1 week's attention could erase a lifetime's experience. "What do you want people to remember from all this?" she asked finally. Malcolm looked around at the festival, the light, the sound, the sheer messy beauty of his city. "I want them to remember that we belong here, that our stories matter, even when they're hard to hear, that every time we're knocked down, we get back up and we lift someone else with us." She nodded, writing furiously. "Thank you, Malcolm. Not just for the soundbite, but for the example." He smiled. "Anytime, Simone." She was about to walk away when a commotion broke out near the food stalls. 2 men were arguing, voices raised, the tension spreading fast. Malcolm moved without thinking, putting himself between them, hands raised in peace. Hey, this isn't what tonight's about. Come on, brothers, let's cool it down." One of the men glared, fists clenched. "You don't know me, man. You don't know what I've been through." Malcolm met his eyes. "Maybe not, but I know what it's like to carry more than your share. Let's not give these kids another reason to be scared." The words landed. The crowd held its breath, and slowly the anger drained from the man's face. He stepped back, muttering, and walked away. The other man let out a long breath, hands dropping to his sides. Malcolm nodded to both. "Tomorrow's a new day. Let's make it a good one." Applause broke out, quiet but meaningful. Curtis found him a few minutes later, grinning. "You're a regular peacekeeper now." Malcolm shrugged. "Somebody's got to do it." They watched the fireworks together, faces glowing in the colored light, the city stretching out before them, battered but unbowed. Monday brought rain, hard and unrelenting. Malcolm worked from home, the weather a perfect excuse to keep the world at arm's length. He spent the morning catching up on paperwork, the afternoon on video calls with youth program directors. Denise popped in between court dates, raiding his fridge, tossing him updates on her latest clients. "I got a kid today," she said. "Reminded me of you. Smart, stubborn, mouthy. He's got nobody but his grandmother. I'm trying to keep him out of trouble, but it's uphill." Malcolm nodded, remembering what it was like to be that kid, the line between a future and a record so thin you could trip over it without ever knowing. "Tell him to call me," Malcolm said. "Maybe I can help." Denise smiled. "I already did." As she left, she paused in the doorway. "You're doing good, Malcolm, even when it's hard." He didn't answer, but the words stayed with him. Later, as the storm died down, he stepped onto the porch, watching the city steam and breathe. The street was quiet, puddles shining in the light. He thought about his parents, about the promises he'd made at their graves. He thought about the kids, the festival, the angry men whose pain was so close to spilling over. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos from the week. Some were hard to look at, reminders of suspicion, moments of humiliation. Others were bright, smiles, handshakes, hugs from children who saw only the good. He closed his eyes, letting the sounds of the city fill him up, a chorus of hope and heartache. He knew he would be stopped again, somewhere down the line. He knew there would be more challenges, more tests, but he also knew he was ready. The road ahead was still his, and he would walk it with his head high, no matter how many times the world tried to slow him down. By midweek, the buzz had shifted. The city's attention had drifted to a new scandal, a developer caught bribing officials, a viral video of a city council member shouting at a constituent. Malcolm welcomed the break, glad to slip back into the background, to just be a man moving through his city, doing the work that mattered. At the rec center, the kids mobbed him, begging for basketball tips and stories about his fancy car. He made time for each one, kneeling to tie shoes, listening to problems, offering advice. He watched them run and play, hearts unburdened, hope unbroken. One of the counselors, a young woman named Tasha, pulled him aside. "You know you're the reason half these kids believe in themselves?" He shook his head. "They're the reason I keep trying. They deserve the world. Tasha smiled. You give them that, whether you know it or not. He watched as she returned to her work, her patience and kindness a reminder of all the good that could be done, even on the hardest days. That evening, Malcolm went home, made himself dinner, and called Denise just to hear her voice. How's your day, Dee? She laughed. Same old, but I got good news. My client's charges got dropped. He's going back to school next week. Malcolm grinned. You're changing the world, one kid at a time. So are you, big brother. He felt lighter, the burdens of the week easing. He went to bed that night with a sense of peace, knowing that no matter how slow the progress, every day was a step forward. He dreamed of his father, smiling and proud, telling him to keep going, and Malcolm woke ready for whatever came next. Malcolm Reed stood at the crossroads of his own city, both celebrated and challenged, never quite at rest. The memory of that night, the blue and red lights, the silent accusations, the cool doubt in the officer's eyes stayed with him, not as a wound, but as a constant ache, a reminder. It followed him into every new day, every handshake, every time a stranger recognized his face from the news or a mother thanked him for what he'd done for her child. Days turned into a blur of obligations, each one stitched together by Malcolm's stubborn will. If there was a hidden fatigue in his eyes, only Denise and Curtis could see it. Most people just saw the pillar, the man who gave, who built, who showed up, the one who did not shrink. It was Thursday, and the city's air crackled with an approaching summer storm. Malcolm drove through downtown in his Mercedes, the city skyline sliced by gathering thunderheads. His thoughts drifted between meetings and memories until the vibrating of his phone snapped him back. The call was from Simone Harris, the reporter who'd covered him before. Malcolm, I know you're busy, but would you come to the station for a live segment tonight? We're talking about community, policing, and giving back. Your voice would mean something. Malcolm hesitated. He was tired of being a symbol, tired of being called only when the city needed to polish its conscience. But he thought of the kids, the neighbors, the teachers and parents who never got a microphone. All right, Simone, he said, I'll come, but I won't sugarcoat anything. She laughed. Wouldn't expect you to. That afternoon, Malcolm prepared for the interview the way he prepared for everything else, with honesty, calm, and a refusal to perform. He pressed a shirt, ironed the lines from his brow, and drove to the TV studio, Denise's words echoing in his ear. You don't just speak for yourself, you speak for all of us. At the studio, the producer ushered him in, lights glaring, mics clipped to his collar. The other guests were already in their seats, a retired police captain, a local pastor, a city councilwoman known for her fiery speeches. Malcolm took his place, nodding to Simone as the cameras rolled. She opened with the story, Malcolm's stop, the new police station, the donations. The retired captain offered platitudes about good intentions on both sides. The pastor spoke of healing, of community and faith. The councilwoman launched into a passionate plea for more oversight, more accountability, more action. When it was Malcolm's turn, he spoke from the heart. You can't measure a city by its skyline or its budget. You measure it by what happens when nobody's watching. I was pulled over outside a building I helped fund. That hurt. But I'm not the only one. This happens every day. To people without my name, my resources, my connections. It's not about one incident, it's about a pattern that has to change. Simone leaned in. So what do we do? How do we change it? Malcolm looked at the camera, as if looking straight through it to the city on the other side. We show up, we call it out, we keep giving, even when the world tries to take, and we refuse to let bitterness win. The segment ended with applause, not forced but genuine. As the lights dimmed, the other guests shook his hand, offering quiet words of thanks or apology. Malcolm left the studio exhausted but satisfied. He had told the truth, and the truth mattered. That night, as rain pelted the windows, Malcolm and Denise sat in the living room, watching the replay on the news. Malcolm's face was solemn, his words deliberate. Denise nudged him. You looked good, big brother, like you belonged up there. He smiled. Didn't always feel that way. She was quiet a moment. What now? Malcolm stared at the ceiling. Keep doing what we've always done. One foot in front of the other. Outside, thunder rolled. Malcolm let himself hope just for a moment that something might shift, even if only a little. Friday dawned warm and muggy. Malcolm walked a few blocks to a local cafe for coffee. The owner, a wiry man named Darius with a salt and pepper beard, grinned as he saw Malcolm approach. You're famous now, Reed. We got a line out the door, folks hoping to spot you. Malcolm laughed, ducking his head. Don't say that. I still owe you for that broken mug last month. Darius waved it off. Man, after what you did for the hospital and the wreck, you drink free for life. Malcolm sipped his coffee, settling at a corner table. He loved these mornings. The quiet before the world demanded more from him. The gentle bustle of neighbors greeting each other. The smell of cinnamon and fresh bread. A group of young men sat at the next table, voices low. Malcolm caught snatches of their conversation. College, jobs, the police, the festival, his own name. He tried to tune it out, but one of them turned. Excuse me, Mr. Reed, can I ask you something? Malcolm smiled. Of course. The young man shifted, nerves obvious. How do you keep doing it? After everything? Malcolm leaned forward, voice steady. You don't let one bad moment erase all the good. You find your people. You keep going. Even when you're tired, especially when you're tired. The young man nodded, relief in his eyes. Thank you, really. Malcolm finished his coffee, feeling a little less tired. He spent the rest of the morning at the community center, reviewing grant applications and helping the staff plan their summer program. Tasha, the counselor, showed him the new computer lab, each terminal labeled with the names of donors, kids' artwork taped everywhere. Looks amazing, Malcolm said, pride softening his voice. Tasha beamed. Wouldn't have happened without you. He shook his head. Wouldn't have happened without all of us. She smiled. You ever think about running for office? He laughed. Absolutely not. I like getting things done. Tasha smirked. You say that now. He left her with a grin, waving to the kids in the hallway. His phone buzzed, a reminder about the City Hall panel that afternoon. He squared his shoulders and prepared to face another round of speeches, questions, and politics. At City Hall, the council chamber buzzed with anticipation. The panel included activists, city officials, and Malcolm himself, seated between a judge and a police sergeant. The topic, building trust and accountability. The moderator opened with Malcolm's story, the headline now almost folklore. Each panelist shared ideas, frustrations, hopes. Malcolm listened, then spoke from his heart. Trust isn't built in a day, and it can be lost in a second. But every time we show up for each other, every time we keep a promise or admit a mistake, we plant a seed. It's slow, it's hard, but it's worth it. A city official asked about forgiveness. Malcolm paused. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let the past make you bitter. It means demanding better of ourselves and of the people who serve us. There were nods around the table, murmurs of agreement. After the panel, people clustered around him. A mother pressed his hands in hers. My son's watching. Thank you for giving him hope. A teenager shyly asked for a selfie. You make us proud, Mr. Reed. Malcolm left City Hall feeling drained, but also lit from within. He had spoken his truth, and it had echoed. That weekend, Malcolm and Denise hosted a barbecue for the neighborhood. Old friends, new neighbors, children everywhere, laughter spilling into the street. Curtis arrived early, already complaining about the heat and the lack of good ribs. Bro, next time we do this at my place, you ever had my brisket? Malcolm grinned. Once, never again. Curtis feigned outrage, then hugged him hard. Seriously, man, proud of you, of all of us. Denise manned the grill, Curtis chased kids with a water gun, and Malcolm let himself relax, surrounded by the people who mattered most. The food was good, the music better, the sense of belonging the best of all. As dusk fell, the conversation turned quiet, thoughtful. A neighbor, Mrs. Washington, sat beside Malcolm on the porch swing. She'd lived on the block since before he was born. You remind me of your father, you know. Stubborn as a mule, kind as Sunday morning. Malcolm laughed, wiping his hands. I try. She patted his arm. You keep going, son. You keep showing them what we're made of. He nodded, grateful for the blessing. The next day, Malcolm joined Curtis at the gym again. Their games were slower now, both men older, but the competition never dulled. Curtis stopped mid-court, panting. You ever gonna slow down, Mal? Malcolm shook his head. Not today. After the game, as they rested, Curtis grew serious. You ever think about writing it down? The story, the stops, the giving, the fighting? Kids need to hear it from you. Malcolm shrugged. Who'd want to read it? Curtis pointed at the door, where a line of kids waited for high fives and advice. Start with them. The rest will follow. Malcolm considered it, the idea burrowing deep. Later that afternoon, he sat in his home office, staring at a blank notebook. He wrote a single sentence, "You belong here." He didn't know if he'd ever finish, but he knew it mattered. The weeks rolled by, the city's attention shifting to new stories, new scandals, new hope and heartbreak. But for Malcolm, nothing was ever really the same. He moved with a quiet purpose, more resolved than before, more determined to give, to speak, to stand. He knew the world wouldn't change overnight, that the next stop could happen at any time, that trust was fragile and progress slow. But he also knew the power of showing up, of refusing to shrink, of building something that would last. He was not alone. In every handshake, every thank you, every child's laugh and mother's smile, he found proof that he was part of something larger, a city still learning, still struggling, still moving forward. Malcolm Reed kept driving, kept building, kept believing. He belonged. The city never really quieted, even at midnight. From his bedroom window, Malcolm watched the amber glow of streetlights, the distant flicker of passing cars, the silhouettes of people moving through the summer heat. He found himself replaying moments from the past weeks, every interview, handshake, uneasy conversation. He wondered if he was making a difference, or if the world would keep spinning in the same circle, demanding more and more from people who looked like him. He picked up his notebook and started writing, words coming slow but steady. He wrote about growing up on the South Side, about his parents' sacrifices, about Denise braiding his hair on school mornings and Curtis challenging him to run faster, jump higher, think deeper. He wrote about every routine stop that wasn't routine, about the way the world could turn on a dime, about how each time he had to dig deep for dignity that was always his, but too often denied. He wrote about hope, too, about the neighbor who left tomatoes on their porch, about the teachers who stayed late to tutor kids whose parents worked the night shift, about the ways people cared for each other when nobody was looking. He filled page after page until dawn crept through the blinds, soft and gold. Later that morning, Denise found him in the kitchen, mug of coffee in hand, eyes bright despite the lack of sleep. "You up all night again?" she teased, setting her briefcase down. He nodded. "Had some things I needed to get out." She eyed the notebook. "You gonna let me read it?" He grinned. "Not yet, maybe soon." Denise poured herself some coffee and leaned against the counter. "You know, every kid who comes into my office knows your name now. You're not just a headline anymore. You're a reason." He looked at her, emotion thick in his chest. "That's the only thing that makes any of this worth it." She squeezed his shoulder, her pride unmistakable. "We're not going anywhere, Mal. Not until the world sees what we see." He finished his coffee and walked her out, the air already sticky with summer heat. The city was alive, relentless and imperfect, but it was home. The afternoon brought a call from the hospital, an emergency meeting about funding for a new mental health program. Malcolm listened as doctors and administrators explained the stakes. More young people in crisis, not enough resources, families at their breaking point. Malcolm didn't hesitate. "What do you need from me?" The director hesitated. "We need more than money. We need someone who can rally the city, someone people trust." Malcolm promised to help. He hung up, immediately drafting emails to city council members, local business owners, and anyone with the means and heart to pitch in. His reputation opened doors, but he knew real change needed more than a check. It needed commitment, visibility, the kind of leadership that couldn't hide behind a bank statement. Curtis called as Malcolm was organizing a fundraiser. "Man, you ever take a day off?" Malcolm laughed. "I will. right after the city gets it together. Curtis chuckled. Don't hold your breath. Let me know how I can help. Malcolm paused, the gratitude plain in his voice. Thanks, Curtis. I'll need you at the event. You're the best hype man I know. Curtis whooped, promising to bring his energy and a borrowed suit. The fundraiser was set for the following Saturday. Malcolm worked the phones, coordinated with Denise, and met with volunteers late into the evening. Word spread quickly. Donations poured in. The city's wounds were deep, but its spirit was stubborn. The night of the fundraiser arrived with clear skies and the sound of gospel spilling out from the community center's doors. People packed the hall, teachers, preachers, police officers in uniform, teenagers in their Sunday best. Denise worked the sign-in table, Curtis shook hands with everyone, and Malcolm moved from group to group, listening, thanking, promising to keep pushing for more. Simone Harris covered the event for the evening news, her interview capturing the heart of the night. We're not here to just patch holes, Malcolm said, voice carrying over the music. We're here to build bridges, to heal, to make sure no child falls through the cracks. Applause rang out, bright and hopeful. The fundraiser shattered every expectation, raising more than enough to launch the new program. Parents wept openly, grateful for a lifeline. Counselors promised to keep the doors open as long as it took. Malcolm stood at the back of the room, humbled. He watched as people lingered long after the event, swapping stories, offering rides, making plans. Curtis found him in the kitchen, both men exhausted but beaming. You see what you started? Curtis asked, nudging him. Malcolm shrugged, shy in victory. Takes a village, right? Curtis grinned, clapping him on the back. Yeah, but every village needs a chief. They left the center late, walking the quiet streets, talking about the past, about the future, about the city they loved and refused to give up on. Sunday was for family. Denise insisted on a home-cooked meal, recruiting Curtis and a handful of neighbors to fill the table. The air was rich with the smell of roast chicken, macaroni and cheese, sweet cornbread, and laughter. As the sun set, Malcolm's house was alive with voices, stories of triumph, of heartache, of hope. Children played in the yard, their joy unbroken by the world outside. After dinner, Denise raised her glass. To Malcolm, to stubbornness, to hope, and to never giving up. Curtis raised his too. To family, the ones we're born with and the ones we make. They drank together, the toasts echoing long after the glasses were empty. Malcolm slipped outside, needing a moment to himself. He sat on the porch steps, the night air cool on his skin. He watched the kids chase fireflies, listened to the easy banter drifting from the kitchen. He felt the weight of the past weeks, the pain and the triumph, and let himself rest just for a moment. Denise found him there, sitting quietly under the stars. You all right, Mal? He nodded. I think I am. She sat beside him, shoulder to shoulder. You did good. He smiled, voice soft. We did good. They sat in silence, the city's music a distant hum. Monday morning, Malcolm returned to work, the pace relentless. His inbox overflowed with invitations, questions, new requests. He met with the hospital team, finalized the plans for the mental health initiative, and followed up with city officials about promised reforms to police training. Word of the fundraiser's success rippled through the city, inspiring other leaders, sparking similar efforts in nearby neighborhoods. Malcolm's phone never stopped ringing. He felt the fatigue in his bones but refused to slow down. At lunch, he ducked into a small diner for a moment of peace. The waitress, a woman he'd never met, brought him coffee with a smile. It's on the house, Mr. Reed. Thank you for looking out for our kids. He thanked her, quietly moved. He realized that every effort, every hard conversation, every refusal to be quiet was building something lasting, a web of trust and hope that reached farther than he ever imagined. Back at the office, he found a letter on his desk. No return address, just his name written in careful script. He opened it and read, Dear Mr. Reed, I saw what happened to you and I cried. I'm just a kid, but I know how it feels to be scared, to feel like you don't belong. You made me believe it's okay to be myself. Thank you for being brave. He folded the letter, tears prickling at his eyes. He had never wanted to be a symbol, never asked to be a hero. He just wanted to make things better. And slowly he realized he was. The rest of the week moved fast. Meetings, interviews, calls from city officials, plans for more community programs. Malcolm juggled it all, anchored by Denise's constant encouragement and Curtis's relentless humor. But even as the city changed, even as Malcolm's circle grew, he stayed vigilant. He knew that for all the progress, the next stop could happen any time, on any street. He taught the kids at the rec center what his parents had taught him: how to stand tall, how to speak with respect, how to protect your dignity no matter the circumstance. And when, one evening, he drove home late and saw the familiar flash of blue and red in his mirror, his heart still jumped. But he pulled over, rolled down his window, and greeted the officer with the same calm as always. This time, the officer recognized him. "Evening, Mr. Reed. Just wanted to let you know there's a water main break ahead. Take the detour on 51st. Malcolm nodded, relieved. "Thank you, officer." He drove home, thinking of all the roads still to travel, all the bridges still to build. The days blurred into weeks. The pain of that night never fully disappeared, but it softened, overtaken by purpose, by progress, by the love and laughter of those who refused to let the world stay broken. Malcolm Reed became more than just the man who got stopped outside the station he helped build. He became a reason for others to try, to hope, to believe that, even when the world pushes back, you keep driving forward. And with every mile, every day, every life touched, he knew he belonged here, and he always would. Summer settled over the city, thick and bright, painting everything in a hopeful gold even as tensions simmered below the surface. Malcolm Reed's days grew longer, his calendar crowded with meetings, community events, hospital check-ins, and the ever-present calls for help that seemed to multiply with every new headline. Yet, through it all, he never stopped moving, never stopped giving. He took comfort in small victories: the mental health program at the hospital, the new after-school jobs at the rec center, the sense that for once the community wasn't waiting for someone to save them, but building something together, one small step at a time. On a humid Saturday morning, Malcolm attended a youth leadership workshop at the library. The room buzzed with nervous energy. Teenagers in their best shirts and dresses, volunteers, a panel of local leaders seated up front. The librarian, Ms. Parker, introduced him with genuine pride. "Here is a man who turned struggle into action, who turned anger into hope, Mr. Malcolm Reed." Applause, scattered but sincere, echoed off the high ceilings. Malcolm smiled, aware that for many kids in the room, this might be the first time they'd ever seen someone who looked like them, who sounded like their fathers, brothers, neighbors, standing in front as the honored guest. He kept it real, as always. "I won't tell you it's easy," he began. "I won't pretend the world always makes sense or that hard work always pays off right away. But I will tell you, if you stay true, if you fight for your place, if you help each other instead of tearing each other down, you will change this city." A girl in the back raised her hand. "How do you handle people who don't want you to succeed, who want to keep you down?" Malcolm met her gaze. "You outwork them, you outlove them, you outlast them. And when you win, you bring somebody with you." That answer landed. Later, as the workshop ended, kids clustered around him, some asking for advice, others for selfies, a few just for the comfort of a quick hug. It was the kind of morning that made the hard nights worth it. As he was leaving, Ms. Parker stopped him. "Thank you, Malcolm. You gave them something to dream about." He shook his head. "They gave it to me." Back home, Denise was waiting on the porch, a file folder in her lap and an unmistakable frown on her face. He dropped his keys in the bowl. "Rough day?" She sighed. "Had to fight to get a client released. 12 years old, Mal. Picked up for walking home with a bag of chips he bought. Said he fit the description." Malcolm's anger was cold, focused. "You get him out?" She nodded. Judge dismissed it, but it never should have happened. Not to him, not to anybody. He sat beside her, both of them silent for a while, listening to the steady beat of a neighbor's music drifting through the open window. Denise finally spoke. "Some days I want to burn it all down. Other days I just want to disappear." He reached over, squeezed her hand. We can't do either. We've got to keep showing up. She nodded, tears unshed. I know, but some days... I know. They sat together until the sun set, holding each other up the way only siblings can, without words, just presence. Sunday at church, the preacher's sermon echoed the week's headlines: mercy, justice, forgiveness, the slow work of building trust in a broken world. Malcolm sat with Denise and Curtis, the pew crowded, the music uplifting. After the service, the pastor invited Malcolm to speak, and the congregation leaned in, expectant. I don't have all the answers, he said quietly, but I do know we're stronger together. When the world tells you to sit down, stand up. When it tries to shame you, walk with pride. When it doubts you, let your actions speak. The church erupted in applause. The choir struck up a song, and for a moment, the world felt lighter. Afterwards, as people mingled outside, Curtis nudged Malcolm. You ever think maybe this is what you were meant for? Malcolm grinned. Preaching? Curtis rolled his eyes. Not just the pulpit, leading, bringing people together. Malcolm shook his head but didn't argue. I just want to do right by the people who raised me. They parted ways, both men feeling the weight and blessing of belonging to something bigger than themselves. The week brought new challenges. Malcolm found himself called to City Hall to mediate a brewing conflict. A proposed redevelopment project threatened to push out dozens of families from the neighborhood. The air in the council chamber was thick with anger and fear. A developer argued the project would bring jobs, safer streets, investment. Residents countered that they would lose homes, history, the fabric of their community. Malcolm listened to both sides, remembering his own family's eviction years ago, the way his mother's voice had cracked when she explained they'd have to move. He stood and addressed the room, voice calm but unyielding. You can't build a future by destroying a past. If you want real progress, you do it with, not to, the people who live here. Debate raged for hours, but by day's end, the council agreed to table the project and form a resident advisory board. It was a small win, but a real one. Afterwards, as Malcolm left the building, an older woman touched his arm. Thank you for seeing us, not just our zip code. He nodded, humbled. It's your city, too. That night, at home, Malcolm received a call from a number he didn't recognize. On the other end, a nervous voice introduced herself as Alicia, a high school senior. I hope it's okay I called, she said. My counselor gave me your number. I want to go to college, but my dad lost his job and I don't know how to get started. Malcolm listened, offering gentle advice, contacts at local nonprofits, even promising to review her application essays. By the end of the call, Alicia's voice was brighter, steadier. Thank you, Mr. Reed. I didn't think anyone would care. He smiled into the receiver. You matter, Alicia. Never forget it. He hung up, feeling the old ache again, the one that came from giving so much and knowing it could never be enough. But he also felt hope, sharp and clear. The next few days brought more signs that things were changing, slowly but surely. Malcolm's programs at the hospital and rec center were thriving. Donations increased as word spread about the success stories. The city's police chief even called to discuss further reforms, listening sessions, mentorship programs, new policies around traffic stops and community engagement. Curtis ribbed him for becoming the mayor behind the mayor, but Malcolm took it in stride. Every change, no matter how small, mattered. Yet, the more visible he became, the more he found himself the target of those who resented change. A few nasty emails slipped into his inbox, anonymous, bitter, clinging to the past. A local blogger accused him of playing both sides, asking why he didn't just leave if he disliked the status quo. Malcolm saved those messages, not to read but to remind himself what was at stake. He knew the work wouldn't always be easy or safe or celebrated. He did it anyway. One night, as he closed up at the rec center, a car pulled up. The driver, a middle-aged man in work clothes, rolled down the window. Mr. Reed, you don't know me, but you helped my nephew last year, got him into that summer program. He's doing good now. Just wanted to say thanks. Malcolm's smile was tired but real. Tell him to keep pushing. That's what matters. The man nodded, drove off, and Malcolm stood there a long time watching the taillights fade, his heart full. Friday brought a reunion of sorts. His old high school classmates gathered at the park, sharing food, laughter, stories of who'd left, who'd stayed, who'd made it, who'd been lost along the way. Malcolm was greeted with bear hugs and backslaps, playful taunts about his fancy job and TV face. For a few hours, he was just one of the crew again, remembering the days when dreams were small and everything seemed possible. As night fell and the crowd thinned, Malcolm and Curtis sat on a bench, watching the city lights blink on. "You ever think about leaving, Mal?" Curtis asked, quiet for once. Malcolm shook his head. "I belong here. I owe it to the people who didn't get to stay." Curtis nodded. "Yeah, me too." They sat in silence, two men holding up a piece of the world together. The next morning, Malcolm rose before dawn, lacing up his running shoes for a jog through the neighborhood. He ran past the church, the library, the rec center, the schoolyard, each place a memory, a promise, a challenge. People waved, dogs barked, and children called his name. He finished his route at the mural on 56th Street, pausing to catch his breath. Someone had painted a news section. 3 figures, arms linked, facing the future together. Malcolm smiled, sweat shining on his face, hope swelling in his chest. He touched the wall, whispered a prayer, and turned for home. He was ready for whatever came next. Malcolm Reed stood before the glass doors of City Hall, early morning sun blazing across the plaza. He took a deep breath, the humid air thick with promise and the rumble of protest. Behind him, banners bobbed over a crowd gathering for what had become, almost against his will, the biggest day of his public life. The city had called for a community summit on justice and reform. All week, rumors swirled about what would happen, a tense debate, angry walkouts, maybe even a fight. Malcolm had agreed to keynote only after Denise and Curtis all but dragged him to the phone. "Don't run from it, Mal," Denise had said, fierce and certain. "You earned this. You belong at that podium as much as anyone." Curtis had grinned, clapping him on the back. "Besides, the city's about to find out who really pays the bills around here." It had been nearly 2 months since the stop outside the new police station. In that time, the story had evolved from a single humiliation to a citywide conversation, a litmus test for old wounds and new possibilities. And at every turn, Malcolm had chosen to show up, refusing to retreat into comfort or cynicism. He checked his phone, dozens of messages from reporters, supporters, even strangers. The last was from Alicia, the high school senior. "You got this, Mr. Reed. We're all rooting for you." He pocketed the phone, squared his shoulders, and stepped inside. The marble halls echoed with tension. City council members, faith leaders, activists, business owners, teachers, and scattered among them police officers in pressed uniforms, some nervous, some defiant, all waiting for what Malcolm would say. Simone Harris cornered him at the security checkpoint, her camera crew in tow. "Big day, Malcolm. Nervous?" He smiled, honest. "Wouldn't be human if I wasn't. You're carrying a lot of hope into that room." He shook his head. "Not hope, responsibility. If I fall short, people get hurt. If I get it right, maybe things get a little easier for the next generation." Simone nodded, squeezing his hand. "Go give them hell," he laughed, nerves dissolving in the face of her faith. Inside the council chamber, the mayor welcomed the crowd, her voice both strong and weary. "We're here because we must be. The world is watching how we rise, or fall, together." She introduced Malcolm last, the weight of expectation hanging over every step he took to the podium. He looked out at the faces, a sea of doubt, hope, skepticism, admiration, resentment, pride. He took a breath and began, his voice steady, the story simple. "I was pulled over outside a building I helped pay for. That moment wasn't unique. It happens every day in every neighborhood to people who don't have cameras or titles or a microphone. But that moment also started something. Not because I am special, but because you all saw it, and you asked, 'What now?'" He talked about his parents, his father's work-worn hands, his mother's laughter, the sacrifices that built a home out of hardship. He spoke about Denise, her fight for every client, her belief that justice wasn't a word, but an action. He told the story of Alicia, scared but brave, daring to ask for help. He spoke of Curtis, the friend who always brought him back to himself. He didn't sugarcoat anything. The city is not broken. It's bruised. It's tired. It's been let down. But it's not broken. And every time we show up for each other, we prove it. He outlined clear, specific steps: independent review boards for police stops, expanded funding for youth programs, mental health support for families, housing protections for those threatened by gentrification. Not just talk, commitments. But none of it matters, he finished, if we stop seeing each other as neighbors. If we let fear make us small or anger make us cruel. I won't do it. Neither should you. For a moment, silence, then applause, quiet at first, then building wave after wave, until even the officers in the back joined in. Malcolm stepped down, heart thundering, Denise and Curtis waiting for him at the side. Denise hugged him, pride and relief mingling on her face. "You did it," she whispered. Curtis grinned, tears glistening in his eyes. Now let's see if the city can keep up. But the summit was just the beginning. That afternoon, the police chief approached Malcolm, face set and serious. "We've started implementing your recommendations," he said, "but some people are fighting it, hard. The unions, a few old guard council members, even some of my own command staff. They say we're moving too fast." Malcolm met his gaze. "Moving too fast for who?" The chief hesitated. "Change always comes at a cost, but so does doing nothing." Malcolm nodded. "Then let's keep paying the price until it's done." That night, as news reports replayed his speech and reactions poured in from all sides, Malcolm felt the pressure mount. He fielded angry emails and grateful ones, invitations to national panels, and even a veiled threat or two from those clinging to old power. He stayed grounded with the people who mattered: Denise's humor, Curtis's blunt wisdom, the quiet strength of his neighbors. But some nights the weight pressed down, and he wondered how much longer he could carry it. One of those nights, as he sat awake staring at the ceiling, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Mr. Reed, it's Officer Walker, the rookie from that night. I wanted to say, I'm trying to be better. For what it's worth, you changed how I see the job. Thank you." Malcolm let out a slow breath, hope flickering anew. "Keep trying, Walker. That's all any of us can do." In the weeks that followed, the reforms Malcolm had fought for met real resistance. An old guard councilman accused him on live radio of meddling in things he didn't understand. Protesters showed up outside City Hall, some for him, some against. A few nights, Malcolm found his car keyed. Angry notes slipped under the windshield wipers. He didn't hide. He responded in op-eds and interviews, in town halls and classrooms. Always the same message: we're not leaving, we're not giving up. You can join us or you can step aside. The more the backlash grew, the more the city's younger generation rallied around him. Teens held rallies, painted murals, staged walkouts for justice. Local businesses donated meals to his programs. Parents sent letters, some anonymous, others signed with trembling hope. One letter hit Malcolm hardest: a single mother, Maria, whose son had been stopped by police too many times to count. "You made it so people see us now. Please don't stop." He tucked the letter into his notebook, a talisman for hard days. And then the crisis came. It started with a video. A young man, Terrence Williams, a kid Malcolm had mentored at the rec, was stopped by police blocks from his own house. The video, shaky and raw, showed officers shouting, Terrence scared and pleading, neighbors yelling for calm. The footage hit social media before the night was out. By morning, it was everywhere. Malcolm watched, fists clenched, the old rage and fear burning hot. Curtis called, voice trembling with anger. "You see it? That's our kid, Mal. That's your kid." Denise was already at the courthouse, working pro bono to make sure Terrence had a lawyer and family nearby. The city roiled. Protests formed overnight, the tension palpable. Malcolm called the police chief. "You need to get ahead of this, fast and transparent." The chief, weary, agreed. "I'll meet with the family and the public tonight. I want you there." That evening, the community center was packed, news cameras lining the walls. Terrence's mother sat in the front row, tears streaking her face. Denise and Curtis stood beside Malcolm, a wall of quiet solidarity. The chief spoke first, promising a full and immediate investigation. He announced that the officers involved had been placed on leave, body cam footage would be released, and community observers would be allowed in every step. Then the floor opened. People shouted, cried, demanded justice. Malcolm listened, his turn coming only after the noise crested and broke. He spoke not just for Terrence, but for every kid, every parent, every neighbor who'd been told they didn't belong. We're not here to burn it all down. We're here to build something that lasts. But we need your help. We need your eyes, your stories, your courage. Change comes from us, right here, right now. Terrence's mother hugged him after, words lost in sobs, but her gratitude a force all its own. That night, Malcolm walked home through streets buzzing with anger and hope, knowing the road would never be smooth, never be easy, but it would always be his. The next morning, news broke. The officers who stopped Terrence had been disciplined, one fired for violating department policy. The mayor credited Malcolm's work for laying the groundwork for real accountability. Protests quieted, not gone, but transformed. More people volunteered, more kids came to the wreck, more letters poured in. Simone Harris aired a special report. One man's refusal to leave changed a city. It was an exaggeration, Malcolm thought. Change never comes from just one, but it made people listen. He met with Terrence and his family, offering support, reassurance, and a reminder that this was only a step, not the end. Your story is yours, Malcolm told Terrence. Own it. Use it. Don't let them make you small. Terrence nodded, resolve in his eyes. Curtis hugged Malcolm as they left the meeting. Both men too tired for words, their bond stronger than ever. In the final weeks of summer, Malcolm's life changed again. Invitations to speak came from other cities, from national networks, from organizations that wanted to know how he did it. He said yes when he could, but always returned to his block, his city, his people. The mental health program at the hospital thrived. The advisory board for neighborhood development started work on affordable housing. The police department's new review board, staffed by citizens and officers, held its first meeting. On the anniversary of the stop outside the station, the city held a ceremony at the very building Malcolm had helped fund. The mayor, the police chief, Simone, Denise, Curtis, and half the neighborhood showed up. Mrs. Green from down the block brought homemade sweet tea. The police chief presented Malcolm with a plaque, "In recognition of your leadership, vision, and refusal to back down." Malcolm accepted, but his words were for everyone else. "I share this with every person who never gave up, every child who still dares to dream, every neighbor who knows what it means to belong. This is our city. Let's keep building it, together." Applause, tears, laughter. The ceremony spilled into a block party, music filling the streets, children chasing each other around the building that was no longer just stone and glass, but a symbol. Malcolm and Denise danced under the lights, Curtis cracking jokes nearby, neighbors sharing food and stories, hope humming through the crowd. As the night wore on, Malcolm stepped aside for a moment, watching his city, imperfect, unfinished, but his. He remembered the stop, the flashing lights, the suspicion, the chill in his chest. He remembered every name, every pain, every hope. He pulled out his notebook, writing one last line: "We belong, we build, we rise." He closed the book, the city's music carrying him home. Days after the anniversary celebration, Malcolm felt the city's pulse settle into something new. The calls and letters still came, the requests for advice and guidance, but a quiet pride settled into the neighborhood. People began walking a little taller, greeting each other with more than a nod, organizing cleanup days, block watches, and music nights without waiting for permission or funding. At the rec center, kids painted a new mural, a street full of faces, all ages and colors, arms linked, Malcolm's Mercedes parked quietly in the background, not as a trophy but as a reminder of a night when the world tried to shrink someone who refused to be made small. Denise started an after-school legal clinic, bringing in young lawyers to teach kids their rights and advocate for families facing eviction. Curtis helped turn the church basement into a safe haven for teens, teaching music and carpentry, his booming laughter shaking the rafters. The changes Malcolm helped spark rippled outward. Local businesses hired more youth. Hospital outreach teams went door to door, connecting with families before crises erupted. The police department's new transparency policy brought officers into town halls, schools, and even pickup basketball games, where they were sometimes schooled by a grandmother with a wicked jump shot. Malcolm stayed at the center of it all, less as a leader and more as a catalyst. He told his story at schools, at city forums, at Little League games, always finishing with the same challenge. Find your lane, stand in it, hold the door for someone else. The city will meet you there. He mentored Alicia through her college applications. She won a scholarship to a state university, her thank you card full of hope and determination. Terrence Williams, the boy in the video, started volunteering at the rec, quietly tutoring younger kids in math and reading, never letting the city define him by a single night. Malcolm's own life found a new rhythm. He kept running the neighborhood, nodding to old friends and new faces. He and Denise cooked big family dinners for neighbors who became family. He set aside time for rest, long walks, and laughter. He learned to let joy sit beside the struggle. One autumn afternoon, as red leaves drifted across the porch, Malcolm sat with his notebook and read back through the words he'd written. The pain, the anger, the hope, the relentless push for something better. He realized, maybe for the first time, that he had nothing to prove, not to the police, the city, or even the past. He belonged, and the proof was in every hand he'd held and every bridge he'd built. He smiled, closed the notebook, and watched the children ride their bikes past his house, their voices floating on the wind, free, unafraid, and full of possibility. That evening, as the city's lights twinkled on, neighbors gathered for another block party. Music, laughter, the smell of barbecue, life moving forward. Simone Harris filmed a segment, this time not about struggle, but about what happens when one man's stubborn hope becomes everyone's new normal. Curtis handed Malcolm a plate of ribs. Never thought I'd see the day you'd be the face of the city, man. Malcolm laughed, shaking his head. I'm not the face, I'm just one story. Denise chimed in. One story can change the whole book. The crowd pulled Malcolm into a group photo. Kids, elders, cops, teachers, families. The moment the camera flashed, Malcolm felt something shift. He realized this was the victory. Not one speech or one reform, but 1,000 tiny daily acts of courage, love, and refusal to accept anything less than dignity for everyone. Later, as the party wound down, he slipped away to the mural on 56th. The new faces were vibrant in the moonlight. He traced his fingers along the painted arms, the bright colors, the linked hands. A small boy, Elijah, one of the kids from the rec, appeared beside him. Mr. Reed, you coming to practice tomorrow? Malcolm knelt, smiling. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Elijah grinned, serious as only a 7-year-old can be. My mom says I can be anything I want if I work hard and don't give up. You think that's true? Malcolm looked him in the eyes. The truth easy now. I know it is. They stood together a moment, silent in the city's hum. As Malcolm walked home under the autumn sky, he understood what his father once meant when he said, "Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you plant in people's hearts while you're still here." Malcolm's story and his city's would keep growing, messy, beautiful, unfinished, but it would never be stopped. He belonged, and in the world he helped build, so did everyone else.